Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma. Joining me to my side, once again, my colleague, A1, Mr. Brian E. Roach. Doing pretty good today myself. I usually don't ever say how I'm doing, Brian. I always ask you. So weather's been getting a little nicer, and that doesn't make me any less annoyed, though, because of other reasons. But we'll get into that here in a second. How are you, my friend?
Well, you know, this is an early morning show for us. Not that everybody will know that, but it is. And I'm annoyed because I'm telling you, this happens at least twice, maybe 3 times a month, where the Planet Fitness person simply just doesn't show up to open the gym. It annoys me. What the hell is going on? I get over there. I'm ready. I want to go into the gym. I want to do my thing. And everybody's waiting in line.
Wait. Your Planet Fitness isn't 24/7?
Oh, no, nobody in Jersey's 24/7 right now.
That's right.
COVID restrictions indicate no.
You're still in bizarro world over there. Even our guy in Ohio. Well, I'll tell you this, the closest one to me, not that there aren't 24/7 ones, but the closest one to me is actually 24/5, which isn't a phrase you hear very often, but on the weekends, they're kind of like, people don't really show up to work out like after 7 o'clock. So we're going to close down until the morning. So anyways, we're behind a little bit here on the programming. Yes. Yeah. For various reasons. One was we just needed a break. We recorded prior to the day 3 proceedings. In fact, some of that may even posted afternoon, 12 o'clock noon when day 3 had started of the NFL draft. So we wanted to give you a little bit of time, let that simmer. We also needed a little time to simmer, and then we couldn't get together yesterday. But what better timing to get together today? May the 4th be with you, Brian. What do you think about the Star Wars, my friend? That's a straight up David Letterman line. What do you think about the Star Wars, Brian?
I like the Star Wars. I like all that sci-fi stuff. But you know, I still disagree with your comment because there is only one king. You're right, but he was returned. That's the return is the king, not the Jedi.
Well, I know you're a Kevin Smith fan.
That was supposed to be revenge.
Yes, it was, which is the reason why they named episode 3 what they named it. And now you've jogged my memory into some other drivel that I'll mention. But first of all, the quote, we got on Twitter and Brian had brought something up, and I had to about Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. And of course, I'm trying to think of the guy's name now from Clerks 2. And he's talking and he goes, "There's only one return, and it ain't of the king, it's of the Jedi, baby," or something like that. And I don't have anything against Lord of the Rings, but I always thought that was funny. You know, he's like, "Hey, it's just more walking," you know. And the reason that jogged my memory was for some reason I was thinking of May the 4th here with the whole Star Wars thing, you know, instead of May the Force, in case nobody's in on the haha chuckles, you know. And I used to have, I actually still do. It's packed away, but I was a pretty big Star Wars guy growing up as a kid. It used to be the Saturday or Sunday night movie. Remember they used to have those, and you'd record them on the old VCR tapes, and you still had the commercials, which if any of those actually still worked and you go back and watch some of those like old McDonald's commercials and stuff like that, man, it's like, how do we ever survive as a society to where we are today with some of this stuff? It's just so cheesy and hokey and everything else. But anyways, you know, I got into my teens and they re-released the Star Wars action figure lines like in the mid 90s. And I got like real hardcore into that. And I got like boxes of them. But by the time you got to Revenge...
Did you take them out and play with them, or did you leave them in the box?
No, they were all in packaging. In fact, I just got there was a pre-order. It was the Baby Yoda. I actually bought it for my 7-year-old, and I'm kicking myself for having not bought a second one to just keep in package and stash away. So I'm going to have to go locate one. But anyways, no.
Mint in box. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, most of my stuff I have pretty complete up until episode 3. Then they made the figures like a lot smaller and chintzier, and I was just, you know, and by that point I was more of an adult and just. And if you go into a toy store these days, those action figures I used to buy for $3 are now $10. It's just it's.
Were you really more of an adult? Were you?
I'm never truly an adult.
There you go. See, that's better. That's the right attitude, my friend.
Man, I miss Toys R Us, man. You never grow up. You're always going to be a Toys R Us kid. So
no, that giraffe pissed me
I never
off.
got to go there. I never got to go there. My parents, it's like, no, we're not spending money on that. But of course, I took my kid there because I had to fulfill my own inadequacies of my own childhood. And then, of course, they closed, and now I save money. So anyway, yeah. Anyway.
All right, our banter. Have we fulfilled our banter time to annoy the appropriate amount of people?
Quota that's in there. You always get me off track. It's even worse when I'm lacking sleep. You're more the morning person. I'm more the night owl, at least anymore. I hope you don't catch clicking on the microphone. You know what I've been doing? I've been meaning to do this. I want to catch my breath. A little bit of chapstick there, and then I start playing with the cap. I need to put that out of view. Anyhow.
Ew. Chapstick. Ew.
Chapstick. Gotta do it. The lips get chappy. And there was a place around the corner called Chappie's, and they were closed yesterday, so my heart was broken. I was gonna grab an adult beverage.
See, I just have these rich, full lips that never get chapped. They're so juicy and delicious.
And at least you don't have the Botox or the lip injections going.
Yeah, forget that. I ain't doing that crap.
So, Brian, yes. We got to talk about Najee Harris. We got to talk about Pat Freiermuth. We got to talk about Kendrick Green, but there's a whole slew of other guys.
Oh, and there's a big one. Man, there's a big one. I can't wait to talk about it. It's huge. It's massive. It's the most important draft pick of the day. I can't wait. I'm so excited.
I'm doing that monkey scratching my head like I'm not sure which one he's talking about, because everyone from Mel Kiper to, I don't know, whoever, Jimmy down the road or whatever, the Steelers draft sucked. Like the first 3 rounds.
See, that's not true. Bump Mel Kiper. First of all, Mel Kiper is, I can't say because we're a family-friendly show.
Yes.
But it's the short name of Richard. That's what Mel Kiper is. He's a big, giant, fat one. And here's the thing. The vast majority of the talking heads, they gave the Steelers a really good grade for this draft. Now, again, you know my thoughts on draft grades. Pointless, stupid, and you can't do it at least for 3 to 4 years. But most people look at this draft who are not Mel Kiper Jr. with his head stuck up his posterior and so full of himself that he's likely to explode. And yes, I'd fight him too. I like him less than I like Mark Madden. Okay?
I like him
less.
I was thinking it, but I wasn't going to break it up.
I like him less. I would like to punch him in the face more than I want to punch Mark Madden in the face. Okay.
Let's be clear. We're talking about Melvin Adam Kiper Jr.
Yes.
Not senior. You don't want to fight the old man if he's,
No. First of all, he's probably old, and I don't want to fight any old man.
Well, Mel Jr. here is, everybody knows what we're talking about. He's 60, by the way.
I still fight him. It's fine. It's in my age bracket.
It's still like his first year. He still looks like the same nerd that he did when he first showed up on ESPN, and he's as wrong as ever, isn't he?
He is. I don't like him. Anyway, I've never liked him. I think he's obnoxious and full of himself. And I don't care about him. But the majority of the people think this was a good, solid A- A to B+ draft for the Steelers.
He's like the only one. I think the Steelers were the only team he gave like a C to. Everybody else was like a B+, B-. Of course, he loved the Cleveland Browns draft. And then we find out the medicals on Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Some type of heart condition or something that you hope doesn't follow him into the pros. That's a pretty risky pick then for the second round. When we always find this stuff out. There was years ago, one of the few times I could admit I was wrong, mocking Andrew Billings because you had to get the Casey Hampton replacement, remember? And Andrew Billings didn't go in the first round. Andrew Billings didn't even go until like the 4th round to Cincinnati. He's barely around the league because he had some like medicals that he had a knee problem. I think he went on injured reserve even before the season started that year. And if you were in that inner loop with the NFL, you knew this information, or at least it was available to you, or it leaked, or you had your own doctors that figured it out, or something of some nature, because everyone else was like, oh, this guy's a first-round pick. And, of course, we talk about this, me, you, myself, the professor. You can't have 60 guys that have first-round grades and only 32 first-round picks. So that's what we were talking about. A lot of people, it's amazing. The Steelers have to fix the run game, but then people were mad that they took a running back. You immediately see it would have been if they waited, then they passed on the best ones. This is the way this stuff works in order for the Mel Kipers. He's not the only one. There's Todd McShay and all of these others that are out, less even notable names that are out there. and they grade all this stuff. And there was something, I saw somebody else pulled one up and it was like, here's 17 people who think the Steelers draft is bad. Because you know why? Because these morons, I'll say it, I'm just going to put it out there. The draft Twitter gets on my nerves as it is. Do you see their boards? Go back and look at their boards. They have several players that guys that you're doing mock drafts and are there in the 4th, 5th, 7th round that are going 2nd round. What do they know? What do they really know? I mean, it's all a guess. It's okay to do this for fun. It's okay to try and guess, but they doubled down to try and prove that they're right. There's nothing right about guessing. That's why it's called a mock draft. It's fake. It's maybe an educated guess, but first you got to be educated on the team that's drafting in their needs. For every single mock draft or analyst expert that went out there and said the Steelers have a need at edge rusher, it immediately invalidated their mock draft to me. It's like they just did not pay attention to the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. Okay, Bud Dupree left in free agency. Bud Dupree left after like 6 or 7 games into the season with a ACL injury and went on injured reserve. The guy they drafted last year, Alex Highsmith, went in and played well enough, and not that they could have afforded Bud Dupree, but well enough to maybe give them some confidence that they don't have to go and get an edge rusher. It was never discussed. Everything was about the run game. So when they don't go edge rusher or they don't go cornerback, because they got rid of Steven Nelson, they let him go, but they signed Cam Sutton. That was the plan. That's the reason why they let Steven Nelson go. That's the plan. So you had 2 guys already waiting in the wings. One of them, which started almost half the season last year. And they're saying they should go defense when they have to fix the running game. So when they take a running back, and there's the other guys too, much like myself, this wasn't like a opinion I didn't hold about taking running backs in the 1st round, but it's about the Steelers' position within this versus the other teams that were drafting. We saw the Jaguars immediately take Travis Etienne. We saw the Denver Broncos take Javonte Williams.
Yep.
And those are 2 names where people are like, well, if they would have ended up in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, the Dolphins were trying hard to get up to take Najee Harris ahead of us. Yeah, absolutely. Look, here's my take on the vast majority of the draft Twitter experts. You ready?
Hold on. Let me put this real quick about the running backs. There was somebody that said no matter which of those 3 the Steelers would have taken, people like myself and yourself would have been blowing smoke up the Steelers' posteriors. We're bought and paid for. We're suck ups. Everything else would have said it's the greatest pick ever. Well, it would have been the fit. I think we all agreed any of those 3, whichever the Kevin Colbert and that staff felt was the best fit for that team. Yes, we would have, because we trust their opinion.
I'm not going to go to the extent of saying I think it's the best pick ever or that we're bought and paid for. I don't agree with that. I think we had questions. I think we came around to viewing this as the more likely pick. That's what we kept saying. It doesn't necessarily mean we 100% agree, but if you're going to draft and you're going to mock and you're going to say this is what I think the team's going to do, then you have to use your knowledge of the team to help you modify that draft. It isn't about what I would do, what you would do, what Amish Mafia would do. It's about what we think the Steelers are going to do. And for us, it came down to the point of, based on the breadcrumbs that were out there, based on what their needs were, based on how they drafted in the past, in the sense of best available player at a position of need, it made sense that they were going to do this. And do I think it is a good pick? Sure, I think it's a good pick. It's a good, solid running back that should be able to give them a solid 5+ years of service. If he gets to a second contract, great. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But they've got the 50-year option because they got him in the 1st round. And maybe that's a good enough reason to have drafted him in the 1st round at 24, right? Secondarily, would I rather have had them take an offensive lineman? I don't know. Maybe it'll depend on how the guys that they got work out. But, do we trust Kevin Colbert? Yes, probably more so than a lot of Twitter universe or the mock draft world does. But this is what I want to say about those guys. I make no bones when I make my mock drafts that I'm mocking the whole process, right? I make no bones about it. I am making fun of the entire process, right? But I will trust what mock draft Twitter says the minute one of them gets a damn job in the NFL and is actually getting paid for what they do. Because until you do, shut the bleep up.
Mike Mayock. Mike Mayock.
Well, yeah, but he wasn't really draft Twitter. He was an analyst, and he had some background.
Yeah, but he's still, it's like, it fits the mold, though. It's one of these guys.
Yeah, and what are people talking about the Raiders? What the hell are they thinking half the time? They're not, maybe, let's see how it plays out. But if it doesn't, there's you go. You got your guy who is your mock draft maven, and instead of making great picks, although they are blaming it on Gruden, right? They're saying that Chucky went rogue.
How's he involved writing the name on the card? I don't know. No, actually, this is the same thing as the gentleman who didn't get the 5th-year option taken, and everybody puts out their clickbait immediately, and it put it in such a way that makes it sound like he's doomed with the roster, doomed with the team. Terrell Edmunds, he's still under contract this year. This 5th-year option is for next year, being paid as a safety, being paid like Minkah Fitzpatrick's going to be paid, and I don't think there's any bones about it. Maybe as much as Terrell Edmunds would probably like to be paid the same way, I think realistically he knows that he's not the same level or caliber or thought of tier of player, at least at this point in time. You got that sense. I mean, I'm sure Bud Dupree kind of knew that a few years ago. I got to step my game up. I got to get better. I got to get paid, So it doesn't mean he won't be back. In fact, we didn't really get to talk about that because we've been so draft heavy. But part of it may have been briefly brought up, maybe myself and Zach, maybe very briefly. But if we didn't, at least in the back rooms we were talking about, probably won't get picked up because the 5th-year the option is going to be more than they're probably going to do something like an extension. And when he gets re-signed, you're going to hear everybody groan, moan, complain, whine, bellyache, the same way they did with Mason Rudolph. It's just like. That was the other one here, Brian, in the draft.
Oh, I know.
Got to draft a quarterback. When? They didn't have the top 5 picks.
I got into a conversation with a guy today or yesterday at the convenience store who saw that I had my Steelers mask on, and he goes, "Oh, so how do you like your draft?" I said, "I like it. It was a solid draft. I think I'm pretty happy with it. It's not everything I would have wanted them to do, but I can see the reasons that they did what they did." "Oh, but did you get a quarterback?" "No. Why would I? I don't need one." He goes, "What do you mean you don't need one?" And I said, "Are you a Steelers fan?" He goes, "No, I'm an Eagles fan." I went, "Well, shut up. We don't need a quarterback.
What about you
not
guys?
This year. Yeah, not this year. We don't need a quarterback this year." And for those folks who are like, "Well, Mason's not the future," I agree with you. Mason isn't the future, but he's a stopgap, and I'm okay with that.
And you got to give him a shot. And this is a guy you had a first-round grade on. Or many people did. Many people were mocking him, or Lamar Jackson for that matter, to the Steelers. Said Mike Tomlin was in love with these players. And then you get them later in the draft, and it's like people were excited about. Actually, people were still excited about it at that point. I know you aren't the biggest fan of that. That's okay. All right. And you can have that opinion, but the problem is like you don't give any of these guys a chance. What backup quarterback in the NFL is any good to begin with? You're going to have most of these, half of these guys that just got drafted are going to bust out. I'm not going to necessarily crown Trevor Lawrence the future of the NFL. You got to see him play first. I don't care if he's a first-round top overall pick. And that's where somebody got me on Twitter back and forth.
Just really 2 words: Jamarcus Russell.
Oh, geez. Either the biggest bonehead in the history of professional football or the biggest genius because he got paid. And then they tried to go back after that money. He still got paid. I don't know if he just didn't care about his legacy and was like, well, I got paid. I'm done. I don't have to do this. Or if he was just really that bad, dumb, and stupid, didn't care and still thought he could just glide by. I heard they had given him blank tapes to watch for film and then asked them if they watched it. This came out like about a week ago, and I saw it. Maybe it was an old story, but I saw somebody sharing it.
That's hilarious.
And then asked him if he watched the film the next day, and he said, yeah, they were trying to see because they had a feeling he wasn't doing it and he wasn't putting in the work. But somebody said they were really on this Rudolph kick for whatever reason. I don't know where it began. I'm not going to continue going through it, but tell me right now, you'd be 100% on board with Rudolph being Ben's successor for the next 10 to 15 years, a yes or no answer only. I'll be waiting. And then they were like, I still don't have a response, like 4 hours, because, I live on Twitter for just to get into arguments like this. Right. And my response is there isn't a single quarterback in the NFL that I'm going to say is a 10 to 15 year guy right now. Patrick Mahomes may be the closest. He's got the largest deal. But you think about anybody, somebody like Russell Wilson, are they going to play another 10 years? He's already been around, like about 7? I'm just throwing it off the top of my head. But you would have to for 10 years, let alone 15. How long's Ben been around? This is 18 or 18 for Ben, right?
Yeah.
Year 18. Just think about that. There's only one guy that's been playing longer than him, Tom Brady. So everybody else is out the door. Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, everybody's gone. So the old guard, it's been 18 years. You're telling me 10 to 15. If you even go back to that draft class I was just mentioning, like Lamar Jackson or Baker Mayfield, who's to say any of those guys are going to be around in 10 years? You go back, and I will. This is going to be a show, I think. Go back 10 years and look at in 15 years and look at the quarterbacks who were starting in the league. And how many guys are still around? I mean, come on. 3 to 4 years is your NFL career span. Some of the quarterbacks are going to stick around for a little bit. Maybe Brandon Whedon's still hanging around. He's probably somebody that was drafted about 10 years ago or so. Maybe not even. Maybe not even. That was like what? Trent Richardson, that was that like early 2010s, somewhere in there. 2013 maybe even. I don't remember. But anyways, just look at that. I mean, come on. There's nobody. Let's be realistic. That's just a dumb comment. And to even say 5 years down the road, that's 5 more drafts down the road that they could do other things with. You don't have to. Why are you sticking to this guy for such a long-term thought? At least think this year and maybe next year at
they signed him to a 1-year extension. 1 year.
And then who's to say Ben doesn't come back? And people are like, well, he can't play forever. Yeah, but if you draft it, Bob Labriola in his article today just made mention of that too. He said, if you draft a quarterback, this is where I was getting at, by the way, the other mock draft people, this wasn't a rant just for the sake of ranting. These were the people that were saying the Steelers had to need a quarterback, and because they didn't take a quarterback, oh, well, you get a D on our draft grade. You didn't take the offensive tackle, Tevin Jenkins, like Mel Kiper had mocked. Well, you didn't take my pick, so this is immediately dog crap. You know what I mean? That's the way they act. They get very childish with this. But to think that the Steelers were going to go after an edge rusher, maybe a corner. We had talked about maybe.
Somebody we thought corner was a possibility. Yeah,
they looked at some of the top guys, so I won't necessarily rule that out. But there wasn't anybody that was really mocking them a corner. It was basically tackle. There was some linebackers. JOK was in one of those mocks. At quarterback, you had them. Who's the guy? Kyle Trask. It was like I had a big thing on Twitter. Please stop talking about Kyle Trask. And it's like, oh, he goes to Tampa. Maybe to never be heard of again. Who knows? He may get to develop. They've ruined quarterbacks. Most of these guys, and we talk about this all the time, first round pick or otherwise, and you got to get them in the first round because usually your odds go off a cliff after that. You got a few outliers, maybe second round guys. Derek Carr. Do you think he's like is he on a Hall of Fame path? You have Dak Prescott. You think Dak Prescott's worth the money they're paying him too?
No.
That's still very debatable. Yeah, it could be like a starting quarterback, but they're not the guy that put up the franchise numbers, the best Steelers numbers, and holds some NFL records to boot and has 2 rings on his hand like Ben Roethlisberger. Give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. I think people are totally overlooking, as we get into these picks to talk about the needs, getting away from the draft grade crap, and back to Edmonds too. He could very well be re-signed. Who's to say that he's so bad?
Absolutely.
But you had a bunch of guys like Hayden Hurst, Rashawn Evans, Leighton Vander Esch, Billy Price, Mike Hughes, Sony Michel, a whole bunch of guys. They had like 9 of them. Over a quarter of them didn't get the 5th-year option on there. It's either teams don't have the cap room, they don't believe they're the future, any number of reasons. That could be very well the case with Edmonds as well. We'll see how that pans out. But I thought he had a pretty solid year last year. He just doesn't get all the splash because they don't send him on blitzes, and he doesn't get any picks. But neither did Ryan Clark. And again, the biggest thing with Ryan Clark was he led with his head and knocked people out, and you can't do that anymore either. So how would you view him? You know what I mean? He just happened to have the GOAT playing next to him. That made it a little different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we don't know. He may have GOAT Jr. next to Edmonds here. Maybe they're the next pair. But this isn't about Edmonds. It's just more about fulfilling the needs. Offseason, Steelers offense couldn't run the ball. Very predictable play calling. got rid of Randy Fichtner as offensive coordinator, got rid of Sean Surratt as offensive line coach, replaced them. Adrian Clem, one of the big up-and-coming name in coaching. They added him to the staff maybe a year or two ago. Now he's plugged in there, and for all intents and purposes, looks like he is beloved by the players that are playing with them. And if you can get that kind of attention out of it, it's like teaching. Coaching is teaching. You know what I mean? You get that out of your students, you get that out of your players, you're probably going to get good results. We'll see what happens with Matt Canada, another guy that was a lot of people talk about. Mike Tomlin doesn't really have a coaching tree. A lot of guys don't have coaching trees. Like, what's the Pete Carroll coaching tree? Dan Quinn? Like, come on. Like, the Marvin Lewis coaching tree. Yeah, that one's a real sharp too. I don't subscribe to that type of stuff either. You tell them Bruce Arians and then it's like mumble. No, they got rid of that guy. Whatever. Anyway.
Well, where did he start though? It's like whatever.
Anyway, it's just like they already made the changes to the coaching staff, so that was one step. We'll talk about this more later if they did enough to improve the run game. But now what's next? You don't have James Conner. A lot of people are down on Benny Snell. Let's totally disregard Anthony McFarland. I mean, 5th round pick. You don't know what can happen there. So what do they got to do? They got to get a running back. Oh, okay. Let's draft a corner or an edge rusher, and then still negating the need for tackle. So then what's your draft grade? A D? Like, this is what the mock drafts. This is why it doesn't make any sense. So if you take this in lieu of this, those top 3 guys are off the board. We all agreed maybe Trey Sermon could be whatever. Kenneth Gainwell didn't go until like the 5th round or something. He was hanging around forever in this draft. And we had said he was a bit undersized, and some people had him as high as their 5th guy. Michael Carter, I don't remember where he went, maybe 3rd round. He went after Sermon. I know Sermon, Sermon to the Broncos, I believe. So anyways, and there's the team that had like a lot of my picks too this year, Broncos, because they took Quinn Miners as well. It's like, okay, Creed Humphrey was there 2nd round. You get your panties in a wad because they went tight end, but they got what we arguably said was the best all-around tight end, maybe blocking, receiving, because we know Kyle Pitts is on a whole other planet. We disregard him with an asterisk, and here's the next best guy available, and Kevin Colbert has a hell of a track record with 2nd round picks. So you're just like, man, this one could work out big time already. So then you go from there into the 3rd round, and they get a guy that's a guard, somebody that could pull, which is what you need for the running game. And he's got some experience at center, and everybody's like, well, how are they going to move this guy from guard to center? Because you know what? They've never done that before with some other notable Hall of Fame names. Ding dong, you know what I mean? So now we finally get, Brian, to the picks that we didn't cover. And the reason we're talking about so much else here is because I don't know that we're going to have a whole lot to say about some of these guys, but Dan Moore in the 4th round at 128, offensive tackle, Texas A&M, 2 back-to-back Texas A&M picks, by the way.
Yep.
Dan Moore could be this year's Kevin Dotson. And
I like the Dan Moore pick. Yeah.
Dan Moore was somebody that I think we talked about. They talked to, and we saw he was one of the ones that they identified in this process, because the Steelers don't really hide it. And it seems like most of the draft nicks were all over this too. At least I know the NFL Network guys were like, oh yeah, this guy, yeah. And this is what we were talking about. Another year could have been a 2nd round pick. That was one of the quotes. Yeah, that's exactly what we talked about with this draft. It's just funny to me though, like if you take a guy in the 4th round, it automatically means that he's going to be a nobody. You know what I mean? He's never going to amount to a hill of beans. It's got to be a 1st round pick for tackle, and I think that's just preposterous.
Yeah, look, I'll give the professor a lot of credit. He was all over this. He was absolutely all over the fact that he thought the Steelers were going to target Dan Moore, and you know, I think that he said this was a little earlier than he thought they'd get him, but as we keep repeating over and over again, if you don't think your guy's going to be there the next time you pick, then you take him.
Well, they didn't have
if that's your guy. Yeah, well, they didn't have one. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
But, you know, if they value a guy and they don't think he'll last until the next time they pick, and that's the best value they see for what they want, then you take it. I don't have a problem with the Dan Moore pick at all. I think he needs work. But, again, you've got the time to give him that growth, that time for growth, because you've got Banner and Chooks sitting there. And penciled in as the starters. Could he battle Chooks Okorafor? I mean, I think this guy is a solid tackle prospect. Could he battle Okorafor for the right tackle position? Maybe. We'll have to see how camp goes. But
Okorafor is going to left now. We switched that up.
Well, yeah. That's what I was trying to say. Did I say right? I meant left.
Right. Yeah, your left. I mean,
yeah, my left. Whatever. One of those, the blind side. He was going to be on Ben's blind side. There you go. I'll just forget the rest.
And Ben throws with his.
I don't know. I don't care. One of his two hands.
The gloved one.
Yeah. Oh, and no, don't say the gloved one. That brings up weird MJ references, and I don't know.
It's the first thing I thought of too. That was the cool thing to have, was the glitter glove, like maybe as a kid.
No.
Did you see? Cool. Did you see the asked and answered for the May the 4th be with you here? Even though
I haven't yet.
Labs kind of nose sold here the Star Wars Day thing. I'm a little disappointed in him, but he was talking about this is like his yearly. What has become an annual occurrence. I again provide what I hope serves as a cautionary tale for fans who have spent the last couple of days consuming the grades/critiques written in the immediate aftermath of the 2021 NFL draft. He talks about the 1974 draft, deserves to be recognized, obviously, as probably the greatest ever. Okay. And he reminds us Lynn Swann, 1st round, Jack Lambert, 2nd round, John Stallworth, 4th round, Mike Webster, 5th round, Donnie Shell, undrafted rookie, Bill Nunn was the scout. So all Hall of Famers there. And This was written by a sports columnist, appeared in the January 30th, 1974 edition of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. As a critique on the picks the Steelers made in the first 5 rounds the day before. And I quote, the Steelers seem to have come out of the first 5 rounds of the draft appreciably strengthened at wide receiver, but nowhere else. They didn't get a tight end, and the ones remaining are more suspect than prospect. They didn't get a punter. First 5 rounds, by the way. Didn't get, maybe they were valued a little more then. I don't know, man. They didn't get a punter, although none of the nation's best collegiate punters went in the first 5 rounds. Oh, okay.
What a surprise.
They didn't get an offensive tackle who might have shored up what could well become a weakness. What they did get was Swann, who seems to be a sure pop to help. Lambert, who figures to be the number 5 linebacker if he pans out, and 3 question marks. That's great. Again, credit. Go over to Steelers.com for that article from Bob Labriola. There's a lot of good stuff in here. I would love to just make more commentary on the things that he says in here with some of it. But that kind of alludes to the rest of this. Okay, they finally get their tackle, and it's like, oh, not that guy. Oh, the tackle class isn't that deep. Man, they had, unless it's a first rounder, forget about it. You know what I mean? And I understand some people are upset. Creed Humphrey was sitting there at in the 2nd round, and I did 3 mocks. And the only reason I had a center mocked in the 2nd round, personally myself, was because I bumped all my picks up. I took Najee in the 1st, and I just bumped Creed up to the 2nd. But I had felt that maybe Creed or Quinn Miners, and Miners was there. I felt some of these other guys were going to be there in the 3rd round, and most of them were. And so they got their guy who fits the athletic profile. Oh, he's a little undersized. Again, the same kind of knocks. They know exactly what they're looking for, because this scheme and system and fit hasn't changed in the better part of 30 years. As the Chuck Noll blueprint. It is the defense with Mean Joe Green. It is the Bill Nunn scouting. These things were put in place. That's why the Steelers are more successful than other teams. Whether you like to believe that or not, okay, they didn't win a playoff game for a little while, but they're always in contention to either be in the playoffs at the end of the year, or they're in the playoffs, and that's more than you can ask for about half of the league every year. So when you don't have a losing season since back in 2003, you tend to get a little spoiled with certain things. And then you got to talk about winning the offseason Super Bowl of free agency. Like, did your team get better like the Jets or anything like that? And it's a lot harder to be optimistic when you haven't seen a team do well. I don't understand why people can get so down on these first 4 picks. To me, all fit. They had to fix offense. They had to fix. Ben didn't get sacked a whole lot. A lot of people are like, well, they didn't really repair their offensive line. Three of those guys aren't back this year that played 15 and a half of the games last year. Zach Banner got about a half or so in. I think he got hurt in the third quarter, week 1 against the Giants, maybe. So, I mean, you bring him back. But who's to say that Banner or Corfor, like you just said, are the starting tackles? You're penciling things in. Kevin Dotson can be a starting guard. Maybe BJ Finney's the starting guard. Maybe he's the center. Maybe Kendrick Green's the center. Maybe Dan Moore figures in this. Maybe he's the tackle eligible guy. You got a lot of possibilities here. There's still, people forget about Joe Haig and is it Rashawn Coward, who was a starter with the Chicago Bears last year. They still have veteran options sitting there. They have a pile of offensive linemen to figure out their best configuration of 5 players to be their starters right now. What more can you ask for? Top overall running back in the draft, and then you get a tight end that's the second best tight end in the draft and the best blocking tight end in the draft, somebody who can catch the ball, and somebody who will be here for at least 4 years when Eric Ebron only has 1 year left on his contract, had some problems with catching the football last year, and is admittedly not a blocking tight end. So did they not reload? Did you forget about the other 4 wide receivers that they already have stashed away? The offense looks completely reloaded here, and then you start to get over to the defensive side of the ball with these other picks. The other 4th rounder, Buddy Johnson, linebacker, Texas A&M, already sounds like this is a guy that's got a future. If you think they could find guys like Vince Williams or Robert Spillane, I think this is another find here, Brian. Probably just a special teamer this year, but I think Ulysses Gilbert is definitely on notice because he hasn't been able to stay healthy. And this was definitely a pick to address that and potentially someone that they can maybe mold into starting maybe a couple of years down the road now, because Vince is back on a 1 year, and Spillane was a restricted free agent tender, I believe, for 1 year as well. So the Buddy Johnson pick I liked. I'm going to kick over to you. You could say something about Buddy, but I think the head scratcher was the Steelers didn't have a 5th round pick, and then they trade a pick next year, a 4th round 2022 pick to get back into this for Isaiah with 2 A's, 2 I's, and 2 H's. Isaiah Loudermilk, from defensive tackle from Wisconsin. They have him as a tackle on here. I think he's technically defensive end, but yeah, that one I don't understand. This pick got traded from Dallas, from Philadelphia to Dallas to Miami and Philadelphia again, or something like that. It bounced around a few times before it became the Steelers pick, and then you're just kind of wondering why.
There's only one Loudermilk, and his name is Elliot. Elliot Loudermilk.
That's okay.
Anyway, here let me start with Buddy Johnson. I like the pick. I think that he's got that alpha dog mentality. It's already evident in the interviews. Will he pan into something? That's up in the air. Who knows? He's
Who
got
cares,
some
quite
limitations.
frankly. If he does, then the draft grade just goes higher.
It just goes higher. I think that he has upside, right? And so there is the potential, even if that he is a Vince Williams like linebacker who could be more rangy and have better pass coverage skills. That's what I see in him. He's going to be aggressive on the field. He's gonna blow stuff up. He's probably going to be able to do some blitzing, and he may have more coverage ability than Vince does. Okay. All those are questionable and ifs. He also may be terrible. We'll see. We won't know until we get a chance. Right. I like the pick though. Value where they were picking. That's what I look at for that. Now let me talk about the Loudermilk pick. This confused the crap out of me. Clearly they see something in this guy that the rest of us don't see. I will question this pick until I am proved otherwise, because I just can't imagine that this guy who had in many cases a not going to be drafted rating on him was not going to be around. But clearly they wanted him for whatever reason. And we'll see. We had speculated in the back rooms. Maybe they asked him to drop weight and move him to the outside. I don't think that's going to be the case.
And no, that's already been nixed.
Yeah.
I tweeted that, and then about a couple hours later, I think in that interview with him, they specific, plus the other picks that come following this, that idea is kind of out the window.
No go. Yeah.
Put on some weight to be a 3-4 defensive tackle, defensive end.
Yeah. They must see some traits they like. They've clearly been to Wisconsin enough, right? It's not like they aren't aware of these guys. So we'll have to see. I look at it like, yeah, they're going to get some compensatory picks for next year. Obviously, we think they're going to get, maybe a third, maybe a fourth. So maybe it's not the biggest loss. You had said technically it's like a trade back, right? You trade fourth to move back, except that you just didn't get that much for the move back. And I question this move. Of all the moves they made, this is the one that has me scratching my head going, I don't get it, but we'll see. I just can't. I can't question Kevin Colbert directly on this. Somebody liked it, whether it's the defensive line coach, whether it's Tomlin, whether it's Colbert. Somebody saw this guy and went, Elliot Loudermilk, come on down.
Isaiah.
I'm called. His nickname is Elliot Evermore. It just is because I'm a Scrooge fanatic, and he has to be Elliot Loudermilk.
Bobcat Goldthwait, man.
Let me read you.
Yeah. 80s aren't the same without that guy.
True.
I don't know why I made this pick, So, when I think of Isaiah Loudermilk and looking at his name, like I said, the 2 I's, the 2 A's, the 2 H's, I like to buy a vowel. That's gonna be his nickname for me, Mr. Jeopardy or Double Jeopardy. Anyway, or no, not Jeopardy. This is Wheel of Fortune.
Wheel of Fortune.
The Jeopardy's on my mind because of Aaron Rodgers. So, anyways, yeah, I know. Roll your eyes. That's gonna be his job now. He's transitioning into that, kind of like Michael Strahan was Michael and Kelly or whatever, and he was great at that, by the way.
Bleep Aaron Rodgers. Just bleep it. I don't care.
Oh man, but Ben is the only guy who sabotages his team, right?
Oh yeah,
never anyone else. Never Tom Brady just leaving the Patriots high and dry. Anyway, and then going and building a whole other franchise in Tampa, which they'll just leave them high and dry too, and they'll be back into the doldrums soon enough. Quincy Roche, defensive end, Miami, Florida.
I'm really annoyed that that's how you pronounce his name.
Is it or is it Roche?
I don't know, but I could tell you in Ireland.
Come on. I thought it was Roche.
I don't know. It might be Roche. I don't know.
Me like that.
But I want it to be Roche. Why? Because Roche is Roche, and that's what I want. I want this guy's name to be Quincy Roche. And it probably isn't. I look at it. It's probably
not.
Roche.
And I looked it up again because you did the mind bender on me. It is Quincy Roche.
I said it probably was. I just wasn't sure. I didn't take the time to look. There is a Roche Castle, which is not pronounced Roche in Ireland. It's pronounced Roche. So that's what I'm going with.
Okay, you do you, and I'll do what's right and say the young man's name properly. But Quincy, this is an exciting pick for depth purposes.
For depth, yeah.
Let's roll back on this. Everybody wants every one of these picks to be a starter. If any of these guys are even contributors at this point, in special teams, or have to come in when somebody's hurt, or even come in for a few plays and get a turnover or a sack or something, the pick is worth it. This is how it works at this point. There are 9 draft picks, all of which originally 8. This is why I was surprised they moved back in to get Loudermilk. I'm like, do they even have money to sign all these guys? They definitely didn't have the roster spots. They dropped 2 players, but then they signed somebody else. They got some shenanigans going on right now because the rookies aren't technically signed, and so this will all get massaged out in the coming weeks. But anyways, Quincy Roche. Or any of these players after Dan Moore, you really want if you could get the first 2 rounds to be starters, then you've nailed your draft. And I believe in my heart, if you don't think Najee Harris is going to be a starter unless something happens, or Pat Freiermuth, then there's something wrong with you, period. They got to go in there. They could have drafted somebody like, let's say, Tevin Jenkins, and then maybe he doesn't even end up starting. So why go with Dan Moore? Maybe he could end up being a starter. Kendrick Green. There's a very good chance of that. You have some drafts we brought up when they went all defense. Artie Burns, Sean Davis, Javon Hargrave. They all ended up starting. Didn't necessarily work out in the end as you would have liked. Rookie contracts eventually expire. They upgraded those positions. Maybe a player doesn't work out. But then when it does in a draft like TJ Watt, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Conner, Cam Sutton, you can't keep everybody. So, you got a short window. Yeah, it's great. You got guys on rookie contracts and your team is elevated. It's basically how the Legion of Boom came about. They had like one or two really great drafts there. Richard Sherman, 5th rounder. You know what I mean? So this is what we're looking at this point. When you get to Quincy Roche, we're not saying Quincy Roche is going to jump in there. Now, he's going to be defensive end to outside linebacker, no doubt, in my mind.
Yeah.
That's where he's going to be projected to go. And they needed that there because there isn't – Old Mother Hubbard's cupboards are a little bare on the edge rusher there. So we knew linebacker was going to – so they started this with 4 straight offensive picks. Then they go 4 straight defensive picks. Trey Norwood, 7th rounder, Swiss Army knife as announced by Mike Tomlin during the draft. How cool is that? At least have your name. You could live on that the rest of your life. You can tell your grandchildren. Mike, this Super Bowl winning Hall of Fame coach. I'm going to tick off some people here. It's by name.
He is. Sorry. He is.
Swiss Army knife, listed as a cornerback. We've already heard he's going to be a safety. They've already come out and said that. I kind of felt that I felt as soon as this name was announced that we talked about Jordan Dangerfield and maybe getting somebody that could play some special teams, and he's kind of a versatile player. We'll see how that works out. I'm not necessarily, since they said safety, this isn't like a Mike Hilton replacement just yet. That might already be on the roster, maybe one of the undrafted free agents. I'm intentionally going to leave the last one for last. So
good, because that's the one I'm excited about.
Yeah, but of these picks, these are all young men. Everybody has a shot at maybe making the roster. There are holes, there are openings there, and at least it's depth. These guys may never even get to see the field, or very rarely. And in some cases, you may not want to see them on the field. I don't want to see Quincy Roche because then that means TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith may be dinged. You know what I mean? If they're going the sideline getting the Gatorade bottle, then so be it. And they get in for a few snaps and get to see what they got. But otherwise, you don't have to have every one of these guys become that 1974 draft that aforementioned by Labs.
Exactly, and it's not. They just aren't going to be. You're not going to hit on every pick. If, as you said, if you can hit round 1 and round 2, you've done well. If you can hit rounds 1, rounds 2, and rounds 3, which I actually think they may have done in this draft, you may have starters in all 3 positions there, then you've done really well. If you get anything else out of a draft, that's a bonus, man. I say this every single year. 4th rounds are the edge kind of guys where maybe they can contribute, maybe they can't, maybe they're special teams, maybe they have a long career as a backup. And on rare occasions, you get guys who start. Everything after that is a crapshoot, except for this guy right here.
Okay.
Presley Harvin III. We got a big fat punter.
Oh, well, he probably doesn't like to be called big fat punter, but compared to other guys,
he's not even that big. He's 5'11", 263. He's going to knock some guys down. This is going to be a guy who is, when he goes down and he kicks the ball, he's going to cover too. And guys aren't going to run away from him. He's going to kick somebody's butt.
I'll tell you what.
Defensive lineman size. Almost.
He's Loudermilk size. Well,
he's Elliot Loudermilk size. He's huge. He's a big, giant punter. And look at him. I looked at some of his pictures. Guy's got some tree trunk arms, man. He's going to kick some guys' butts. This is not your little Danny Sepulveda punter who is going to be like, oh, let me wave at the guys he goes by. He's going to watch. I'm guaranteeing this. If he makes the roster, some point in the next 3 years, he's going to lay somebody out.
And he could throw the ball too, which everyone's making a big deal of off of 1 or 2 trick plays that you get on film. But hey, that's all the more chance you're probably going to get in the NFL if they ever run those. You know what? It makes us seem like we're intelligent guys here because we talked about a punter.
Yes, we did.
And
not this one, but we did talk about one.
Special teams possibility there, and lo and behold, there you go. Pat myself on the back here. Presley Harvin the third from Virginia Tech. Let me look. Georgia Tech.
Georgia Tech.
Man, I'll tell you what.
44.8 yards average in 2020. 44.8.
Yeah, Jordan Berry's been put on notice, and it's not like you're not going to see this guy. And by the way, when you said, 5'11", 260?
263.
263. Makes me think of Sir Mix-a-Lot. Baby got back.
I like big butts, and I cannot lie.
36, 24, 36, only if she's 5'3". That's what I think of when I think of Presley Harvin there. I was like, man, he's a load. He really is. I mean, he's not in the mold of the frail little guy punter. Sepulveda, he used to get banged up too, didn't he? That was his main problem. The guy, like we said, it's a very volatile special teams, very volatile position. A lot of people harboring ill will toward Jordan Berry, who had a pretty solid year last year. Obviously, he got cut, and they were trying to improve upon him. I'm not saying that he's like that he was the answer. I'm also not going to just crown Harvin. You got to go through camp and see if he could actually do this job.
Ray Guy Award winner.
Yes, absolutely. Best punter in the nation. So what this does is there's this scenario I'll throw out right now. Let's say Harvin doesn't make the team, and everybody's going to be like, oh, they didn't do anything to address punter, and oh, Jordan Berry's so bad. Even if he's not really as bad, it's just they continue to think of the one time they watched a primetime game, one of the 3 games, now 17, that the casual fan will watch all year long, see a bad punt, and then immediately that guy sucks. And I think that's the Mason Rudolph tag, too, that Thursday night football game against the Browns with the 4 picks and no Juju leaves the game. Deontay with the ear bleeding, and James Conner gets hurt after about 5 carries. And the other guys he's not practicing with these other guys. Who's he got rapport with? He's going to throw the ball to. That's why the offense stunk. And I take a look at the collection of these picks, speaking of the offense stinking, and just we've got a lot more meat on the bone here, but we're kind of up against it right now. Did they do what they needed to do to improve the offense? I believe so. You've got right out the gate 2 guys that are going to play. You got Najee Harris and Pat Freiermuth. You've got Kendrick Green, who's going to compete immediately. And, man, he seems like he's a dog too, huh? I mean, really, he's going to go out there and get it. Dan Moore, he might compete. He might be that extra tackle. Here's another name we don't throw out enough, and I'm always forgetting about. And this was everyone's just complaint last year. As soon as I say it, you're going to be like, ding dong, the light bulb's going to go off. Derek Watt. Everybody's like, where's the fullback at? Why are you paying this guy? And then all of a sudden it's like he's forgotten about. Well, if you can acknowledge the fact that he wasn't on the field last year for most of it, ding dong, yet another thing that when healthy should preclude to having a better run game, short yardage situation, et cetera, et cetera. So
if they choose to use him as a fullback, he was signed as a special teams player.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So. Fullback, you still got to remember, fullback's like 3 to 5 snaps, if that. Yeah. It really depends on game situation a lot of times. They're going to be in the game plan, but if you're up, if you're up a lot and you just got to choose some clock or something, maybe he gets in a little more. If you're behind, he's never going to see the field unless it's goal line, like 2nd and 1 or something. And they throw him out there, and it's like, let's just ram this down their throats. So that's, but it's just something else to bring up. The other thing is like Vance McDonald retired. So who else was there on the roster? It's like people tend to just, I don't know if it's just short memory or just not an understanding of football. Maybe we're just smarter than everybody else. I don't think that's necessarily the case, because there's a lot of intelligent opinions that just happen to be bad ones sometimes too. And there's some that I could respect, but it's just like, it's kind of like the 10 to 15 year thing on the quarterbacks. It's like, man, I'm not crowning anybody 10 to 15 years. I'm not crowning anybody that just got drafted to be. If there's anybody on this roster, it's a 10-year player. Najee Harris, probably. Running backs aren't usually really 10-year players. Pat Freiermuth might get there.
Maybe.
Kendrick Green or Dan Moore could
maybe, but very likely, more likely than the others.
Yes, because of their position.
Yes.
Because maybe like Moore might not play right away. So he's not going to have the mileage on his body. And if he turns into a guy that ends up being a starter, he'll end up playing, after maybe a second or third year. And then he becomes like an 8 to 10 year starter there. He might last a dozen years in the league or something, or a Baker's dozen. So Elliott, Isaiah, Biaval, Loudermilk, I don't know. Like the rest of these guys are guys that might not make the team, and that even includes the punter. Unfortunately, I know that they drafted the punter, but he's 254th overall pick. This was just to secure and guarantee that they got him on their roster, because otherwise he becomes an undrafted free agent, and he
can go anywhere he wants.
Yeah, I don't really like the weather in Pittsburgh. I'd rather go to Jacksonville or something like that. You know what I mean? So. And maybe compete for a spot there. So they drafted him, and maybe the best punter in the draft. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there's teams that looked at him and said, "Man, what a slob! He's out of shape. You can't possibly put him on the field." And he's the only punter that got drafted, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. They were looking there at their draft board, and it was like, well, should I take the 50th best linebacker that's left, or should I take the top punter?
Top punter.
I guess
I don't want to go too deep on the undrafteds. I know we may do a show on them, but I do want to mention Shakur Brown.
That's the only one I was going to mention.
That's the one that matters, because that's your potential Mike Hilton in this draft. That's your potential undrafted free agent who could come in and maybe make an impact. Guy's got skills.
Yes, and what was it? Was there like a streak with Michigan State players or something that didn't?
Nope, nobody got drafted.
First time in like 40-some years. So
wah.
I know you're not a big fan of Sparty. Just
Sparty can kiss my butt.
I guess pro day flop on the 40. Not a good 40. And a lot of spooked some teams, but I guess that was the whole Mike Hilton thing, and now he's getting paid because you know what, that field speed ain't the same as just straight line, running in a straight line in shorts too.
Absolutely.
So I'm looking at Brown. A few of the other guys look interesting. There's other guys that are going to be coming to rookie camps, et cetera, et cetera. We'll be covering that shortly, soon. So Brian, hey man, thanks for joining me once again. I know we're up against it. It's a little early, but we'll finally get some stuff over to all of our listeners, viewers, supporters, and everything else here. So it was good to talk about the rest of this.
Stop giving me crap about my energy drinks, guys. It's fine. I need them. It's early in the morning. I'm tired. I need a little caffeine. I'm not that hyped up, am I? Maybe.
Not as hype as Bobcat Goldthwait. So anyhow, now we go back into the period of time where we're going to have to start coming up with things to talk about again. So there's no more draft. And
more draft.
But you know what?
And I'm not doing a 2022 mock anytime soon. No.
2022 mock draft insanity. Do it. By the way, the Loudermilk pick, before I forget. Based on the trade value, it was graded as the second best trade value, just the picks. I'm not saying the player, to the Bears with Justin Fields, which we thought was quite odd considering like how much less the Steelers gave up to move.
Well, what does that make that trade for Devin Bush? Like the greatest pick in the history of the world?
Something in the modern NFL since the 1970s or something. I don't know. Yeah, it's just. I was shaking my head at that too. I don't know. They said it on the TV, the NFL Network people.
Well, it must be true then. If they said it on the TV. It's it's a French model.
Depends. It depends who says it. You got my attention. If Kay Adams says it,
then you're going to believe it just because your other brain is thinking.
That was the old Terry. If you listen to the WTF podcast here, with Tim Tebow. And his name resurfacing too, and it was like, "Oh, Terry, you didn't have his name on alerts." So I think you had said once to her that he could read a instruction manual for a refrigerator, and she would be like all into it,
little drool coming down the side of her mouth.
He's not listening anyway, so we could poke.
Yeah, I know.
But
Pat, isn't it Pat? Isn't that the guy? Isn't that her husband, Pat?
No, Tom.
Tom, tell her we talked about her, and then maybe she'll listen.
and she's got to go all the way to the end of the show to get it.
Yeah, end of the show. Don't tell her that part. Just tell her we talked about her, make her listen to the whole show, and then laugh at her afterwards.
That's absolutely perfect. I was going to say Nate Burleson, man. He was kind of like the journeyman wide receiver, but usually I like his opinions a lot.
I like Nate.
There's some other guys like Peter Schrager can be quite grinding, but I don't remember who ended up saying it. It's kind of a moot point at this point.
He can kiss my butt too, Peter Schrager. I don't like him, even though he's mean.
Yeah, he's
pissing me. He's pissing me off, actually.
It's your face. I just want to punch your face. I don't know why.
And just here's a little tidbit. If anybody's lasted this long,
yes,
and you could tell me where that quote I just made was from.
Okay.
And the quote is this. It's pissing me off, actually. Find out if you can tell me where that quote's from. We will mention your name on the podcast next time around.
What a big reward! All right, my friend.
Hey, I give what I can give.
That'll do it for us. My name's Joe. His name's Brian. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, we encourage our listeners and viewers out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.